abusuafo na etifo ni di kwan so mema obi bia akwa ababa channel so hi daily update tv ni di kwan so say no first time ababa channel so amesro say uti news ni we na so when you be subscribe for more updates obe like it no share news no so ma love say nya bi etie na uti ni so wo comment bi so constructively mesro so be share comment section ye be je ni akenkan me da so bebre na me pa cho that was on Saturday. IMF Boss, our friend Kristalina, ABP, or my Ghana, Muna, by no Kwakufado, that is the president in the office, Jubilee House, Mumkodin, Komokakra. Now, as to in semi course on Kakra, and been a yede bremono. And yen yede brem debate, their course in the binas, excepts, mechanism, excepts in the yede bremon. And I'm a pacho, coin on Komomudi, no. Now, I say, so far, yes, I say, no credit say IMF Boss, a can send be chair, President another than Akufo-Addo say regarding to the domestic debt restructuring. So far nyeme bua enemy bi aban ye na wa aban na anya de kra because onu nu say enye fair. Akufo-Addo e de hardship abeto on mine na ye ka say that domestic debt restructuring na on say me fancy ye ma me mo ana o madru omo ahomegye mu 60s the pensioners omo ana omo ko pension omo ko pension was abenti omo kana abenti omo kano any other in bia na constitute the domestic debt exchange no so for internal bondholders ya woman to omo sika mo money omo nyina babum and your friend that's the domestic bond exchange any other in maybe see no na IMF boss your friend Kristalina ojina so they can say adia so far yeah finance minister answer buying yeah na kasa na buying na nya de kra because all the hardship abeto on mine o wa can sem or bashe me can say somehow no ponche yeah president power ponche to the men say omre audio be koni akuti ensem no said the makan so comment be so constructively fashion comment section imagine I can come that's very
to now use the
now because the International Monetary Fund is cautioning Ghana to be mindful in its dealings with private creditors, warning a terrible agreement could derail gains made in its support program. Despite completing a domestic restructuring program, the nation is yet to conclude talks with some of its private creditors as part of the $3 billion support policy. The IMF boss and her team are currently in the country holding talks with key government officials. Last night, the IMF chief met President Akufo-Addo. Let's run you through what she had to say and some of the caution she's had to provide to us in terms of leadership and what it is that we should do to ensure that we don't find ourselves wanting. And she says that you cannot allow the Eurobond creditors to twist your arm. You have done a very painful domestic debt restructuring, which has hurt people here. You have agreed in principle on that restructuring with the official creditors under certain conditions. The deal has to be a fair deal. Otherwise, we risk to seeing what happened in Zambia happening here. That's Kristalina Georgieva. She's the managing director of IMF. Well, the president, he gave this response. I take into account very seriously the advice you've given us about our dealings with private creditors. I am sure the finance minister has told you we have made quite significant progress in that area, but it's progress that has to get your buy-in. That's the president. And he had a lot more to say, and we're going to bring that to you also on your screens right now in terms of what the president has had to say. But let's get on the phone lines now. Speak to Professor John Gachi. He's a dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School for quick thoughts. Prof, many thanks for speaking to us this afternoon. So quite interesting, the caution that's coming from the IMF. Some will say or ask, is it fair that perhaps the fund has some indication that we have agreed for starters with these external creditors, but we need to ensure that it is a bit more favorable to us so we don't hurt ourselves in the long run?
Well, it's a nice advice, it's a nice warning, but the truth stands that when you are engaging in this kind of agreement, Ghana is on the weaker side. You have old people, you are indebted to people, you are pleading with them to give you some kind of moratorium in terms of extension of maturity and reduction in the interest on the debt that you owe them. You are starting on a very weak point. And again, those people will agree if they realize that what you are proposing, invariably, when they do their calculations, they will still be standing at advantage point than you. So that is the reality that we need to face. And of course, the caution that the IMF is giving is only to the extent that we should do everything possible to ensure that the deal that we sign is reflective of the interests of the country, so that we don't work only to be paying debt. That is the excess. But coming to the domestic debt exchange program, I think the truth of the matter is that it is not the IMF who say go and bulldoze your way through and to get your people to sign on to the domestic debt exchange. That is the choice of the government of Ghana, that they want to achieve a certain percentage of debt exchange program. The IMF didn't ask the government of Ghana to go and molest, pensioner bondholders. The IMF didn't tell the government of Ghana to go and do debt exchange program that makes the bank fragile and inability to do to transform assets into various loans to get to the private sector.
Prof, all fair really, but here's a case where we might not be able to bulldoze our way through. The IMF will have to okay some of these agreements. How do we navigate this course with the caution coming through, meaning that, as you've already stated, we're going into all of these negotiations from a point of weakness, but how do we navigate it such that we don't overly burden ourselves as a country, and then we are seeking to please two masters here, the IMF and then the external creditors?
I think the point is that you owe some people, you must pay. You cannot pay, you are appealing to them. And I do not know what you want to get better than what they will agree to give you. What the IMF is saying, you may think that the IMF is saying something very significant. Politically, the IMF is trying to expose the government. That is the government's choice of the way they handle the domestic debt exchange, and the government's choice to get something better out of the external debt agreement. It's the IMF who have made debt restructuring as a condition for the government of Ghana. So the IMF will not be behaving as if it's a good advisor at this point.
And so you still believe that they have put all of the debt restructuring in the conversations leading up to securing the extended credit facility, and so they may not play any role at all in terms of negotiations with our external creditors?
In fact, in our earlier discussion, they have made a point that they are closely watching, they are assisting. The government of Ghana even indicated they are assisting in the process. So it sounds so weird for the IMF to stand by providing such a warning as though they are not part of the process. They are deeply part of the process of all these things.
Prof, one last question. If this goes wrong, based on the caution that we're receiving from the IMF, what could it look like? What could be a gone wrong situation looking like for us here in the country?
I do not think that anything will go wrong. The point is that you see, I keep saying that you are indebted to somebody. Legally, you have to pay your debt. You are appealing to the people that your condition is not good. So they should extend the maturity and they should reduce the interest. They will do calculation and see whether it is in their interest, because remember that these debts we are talking, they are all not bilateral, they are all not multilateral.
Right.
There are some which are commercial. Commercial people are interested in their profit they are going to make. They need to discuss with the, those who also have interest in the investment they make. So those are the things they will be doing. If the government of Ghana is able to appeal to them enough to accede to a reasonable level, that is fine. But you see, after the debt restructuring agreement, the ability to pay still come on the table. We still do not change the ratios of our interest payments taking a chunk of our finances. We still have not changed the ratio of our privatization taking a chunk of that. We should have not changed the ratio of capital expenditure suffering in the face of interest payments and then goods and services. So those are the realities. So the reality will not change. We need to work assiduously to change the fortunes of the country. The debt exchange program, external debt exchange program, is not going to be the solution of the country.
Prof, I appreciate that you could speak to us. I'm sure we'll come to you as negotiations continue. That's Professor John Gachi, is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. Take us to our very first break here on News Central. When we return, the Supreme